Welcome back. This time for you I have a Vampire Covenant list with a zombie dragon. So I do have a model for a zombie dragon and I really wanted to play with it once again. Just because I think it's a cool concept, just having a vampire count on a zombie dragon trying to dominate the field. And I was curious whether this would still be viable with the current PDF. So I went for von Karstein to be able to get the Stormcaller. Stormcaller gives your model hard target and everything within 12 inches also hard target. And then I gave him True Thirst to get a Vampiric roll on a 3+. So Vampiric or von Karstein vampires, they already reroll their Vampiric roll, and with a 3+ rerollable Vampiric roll, I'm quite sure to get some wounds back. He's a Wizard Adept because I want Pentagram of Pain to be able to heal the zombie dragon and the Rot Within to be able to buff the defense of the zombie dragon. So it starts at defensive 4 with distracting. If you can get it to to defensive 5 with distracting, it's really good because a lot of troops will just hit you on 5+. So that makes it into a very durable model in combat also. Then we have a Vampire Courtier who's von Karstein also, he's the BSB, and well, Wizard Adept with Occultism. I like the combination of Wizard Adept Occultism on a BSB with a shield and Destiny's Call. Because you go to defensive 7, you can cast Hand of Glory on your own unit so that your unit goes to a 5+ Aegis and you yourself go to a 3+ Aegis. I don't know if the shield is really necessary because you're already quite tanky like that and you have a small base, so the enemy is going to struggle to wound you anyway. So maybe in further lists I'll just transform it into a halberd to get a little bit more offensive power. Then we have a Necromancer to just further support the magic a bit. Skeletons as core, one unit with the Banner of the Relentless Company to be able to push it forward in matchups where I really want to go over the board quickly. Then 10 Direwolves to be able to screen, 2 Great Bats to be able to just put in between some charge somewhere, 2 Phantom Hosts because they are awesome, 10 Spectral Hunters because I thought that with the Zombie Dragon I increase my Inspiring Presence, and also von Karstein they get +6 inches on their Inspiring Presence, so in the end I have a 24-inch range Inspiring Presence, so I don't have to care about marching issues within the list. So I figured that these guys would be the ideal unit in the list actually. So I would have liked to have a Master on Evocation and include the Unholy Tome, so that you have twice a movement spell, but then I think I should also have gone for another unit of Spectral Hunters. I don't have this other unit of Spectral Hunters, so unfortunately that's not going to be possible. And then twice a unit of 3 Winged Reapers. When I put them in, I didn't consider the fact that the Zombie Dragon also counts towards Swift Death, so I'm actually 45 points over. But so for further lists, I'm gonna make sure that this doesn't happen again. Then we go to the opponent, so it's Infernal Dwarfs. It's an army that my opponent has been playing around with for quite a while now. So it's basically just a gun line. So yes, the setup with the Prophet, with Master Pyromancy, with the Vizier, with the Icon of the Inferno, so it's just gonna burn everything to death. Hobgoblins with bows, Infernal Warriors with blunderbusses, 2 bolt throwers, 2 rocket batteries, and just supporting combat elements. So it's these rocket batteries, they hit really hard if you're firing at the right targets, and then there's still the bolt throwers also just trying to chuck down your monsters. So yeah, I would say it's a good test for the zombie dragon, at least, to see if it can survive this amount of shooting and magic. Speaking about magic, this is the magic that I took. So on the top left I have my Necromancer with the Spectral Blades and the Rise. On the top right I have the BSB with Hand of Glory and the Rise. And on the bottom it's the General with Pentagram of Pain, the Rot Within, and the Dead Arise. Then for my opponent he had the Wizard Apprentice who took a Fireball, and then the Wizard Master took Haze of Magnesia, Flaming Swords, Pyroclastic Flow, and Enveloping Ambers. Yeah, so he's just going all out on the pyromancy just to blast me away. And then here we have some army pictures. I forgot to take them at the start of the battle, but at least we have some from the end of the battle. And then let's go into the battle. So we are playing Dawn Assault with Breakthrough. My opponent was able to choose the table sides based on his higher roll. And then I was able to choose who was going to deploy first. My opponent put his 4 Dragon Ogres into ambush, and I then deployed first. I just dropped everything. It's an army that I think, my opponent is playing gunline. I want to just rush in as quickly as possible. So often with Vampire Covenant you actually don't want the first turn because you can react to your opponent better, and you have the raises that are more effective if you already have suffered some damage. In this case I do have a Necromancer that can already buff up my my units a bit. I do already have Pentagram or the Rod Within on my caster, so I do have some first turn magic potential that I can just cast, and I do have Hand of Glory that I can cast to get a 5+ Aegis save on the dragon, which is also going to shield me a bit more from his shooting. So I thought it was a good idea to just drop and go for first turn. As you can see, my opponent is going to deploy mostly on the right because that's where his deployment zone is with this Dawn Assault, and the Dragon Ogres are going to arrive on the right also. I didn't realize that they had Strider Ruins. That's something I discovered later in the game, but my initial plan was to go with the Spectral Hunters into the Ruins because they don't suffer from the Ruins. They will have hard cover from there, and if they're still within 12 inches of my dragon, they'll have another hard target on top of that. The skeletons, so the bottom block of skeletons is the one with the Relentless Company banner. They can just march up as quickly as possible in first turn just to cover the distance. And the other 2 skeleton blocks can hold a little bit of Overwatch then. And on the left flank I mostly have the Winged Reapers that can advance up a bit more quickly with the Direwolves to shield them a bit from shooting. Then the Zombie Dragon, yeah, he just basically stays in the middle of the field. So I could have gone for a Zombie Dragon on the right in the Ruins, but he doesn't get any cover from that anyway, so the only thing that gives him any cover is the forest. So there's a forest on the left, there's a forest on the bottom, but not any forest that will cover my advance. So I thought at the start of the game that my opponent's rocket artillery were catapults. They turned out to be volley guns. So I should have just put the Winged Reapers up front and the Zombie Dragon a little bit more back, because if I stay behind the Winged Reapers I get soft cover, and then the soft cover will affect the volley guns, but it wouldn't affect the rocket batteries had they been catapults. But still, for the Blisters I actually also should have just stayed behind the Winged Reapers. So as you can see, I did my turn 1 moves, and my opponent, he deployed as expected with just War Machines hanging in the back, the Hobgoblins with the bows hanging in the back, basically his entire army hanging in the back. So he always deploys his Kadim Incarnates facing towards himself or towards the board edge, because otherwise they can be frenzy baited. On the other hand, this allows you also to advance up quite aggressively without any danger of your opponent charging into them. So but basically I don't have to worry about the Kadims on the left, especially at this moment yet. And then when you see this army advancing, it's quite funny that the 12-inch Stormcaller of the Zombie Dragon actually stretches all the way from the Spectral Hunters to the Direwolves to the Winged Reapers. So the entire army is actually covered in hard target bubble, and also the March bubble of the General extends even twice that far. So he's kind of in the middle of the field, and his March bubble just covers the entire field with the 24 inches. So that is quite amazing. In Magic Phase I did get my 5+ Aegis save on the dragon, and then we go to my opponent's turn. So you can see that he moved up his Hobgoblins beyond the line of sight of my Winged Reapers, and also he moved up the Kadims beyond the line of sight of my Direwolves. So about these Hobgoblins, I could have made sure that they couldn't go there, but I was actually very glad that I positioned it such in a way that he could get behind me, because I don't really mind him going behind my Winged Reapers, because he's never going to charge in. It's going to take him like 3-4 turns to get to a situation where he does want to charge into anything. He might put some pressure on the skeletons, but the skeletons have a high static combat res that they will just break the hobgoblins once he comes close. I'll be within the range of my general, so I won't have to charge after them, probably after a failed restrain. So the only risk that I run is having my great bats being charged by the hobgoblins, but they have a movement that is so high that they can easily evade the hobgoblins. So I'd rather have him use them in this sense than to have him use them as chaff. And then the Kadims, they went out of line of sight of the direwolves, but they didn't go out of the line of sight of the winged reapers, and I was quite surprised by that. Because after a charge of the winged reapers, I strike first with 15 attacks, hitting on 3s, so that's 10 hits, wounding on 3s, so that's like 6 or 7 wounds. And then after ward saves, it's like 5 wounds normally. Then he gets to strike back with 6 attacks, it's 4 hits, it's 1 or 2 wounds. So I would expect him to crumble. He does have his volcanic embrace, but that shouldn't do too much. So I would expect him to crumble just in one turn, basically. So I thought that was a very bad play by him, and I was very happy to see it happen. And also this opens up my direwolves to just fully advance towards the war machines. Maybe even charge them if they make it. So then my opponent goes to town, basically, on magic and on shooting. So that's what this list is designed to do. So I am lucky in the sense that the Titan mortars are both more than 24 inches away of most of the important aspects of my army. And then the winged reapers, they would benefit from soft cover, so he's just shooting at the dragon. It's going to be long range, it's going to be hard target because of the storm color. So the Titan mortar on the left is hitting me on 6s, the one on the right with the engineer is hitting me on 5s. And the bolt throwers, they also hit me on 6s because of long range hard target. So he does get some hits off, he does get some hits off with magic also. So I should have been behind the winged reapers because this turn I took 3 wounds through his shooting, so that was a bit too much to my liking. I didn't really like getting all these wounds on the dragon, so it's this point is a little bit of a split decision. Either you can just continue the advance and just go for it, go for broke basically, or I could have just turned back, walked away and said, well, okay, I'm not gonna try even, just go for the draw, because I think in a tournament scene, if it's like a team tournament, I don't know if I would have gone for it, because I could just go back, in the sense that the winged reapers, they can fly back behind the wall, then the zombie dragon can go behind them. The zombie dragon will have soft cover from the winged reapers, I'll have hard targets, it's going to be long range, so he's not going to hit me a lot. I'm able to just regain the wounds on my dragon, and then he's not going to get the points either. So yeah, in my movement phase, the winged reapers on the left, they charge into the Kadims. Otherwise I advance up a little bit more carefully with just the winged reapers providing cover for the zombie dragon, because he just couldn't make it to the forest. And I also don't really like the matchup between the Infernal Engine and the zombie dragon, just because it ignores the distracting bubble or the distracting modifier on the model itself. So the 3d3 grinds at strength 6, I believe. Yeah, that's a dicey one, because I only have my 10 strength 6 attacks back, and if I win, I don't know, I wouldn't know what to expect, because probably he can also, he can't charge in with a ranked unit and get the Infernal Engine in. So maybe if I had been really ballsy, I could have just put the zombie dragon in front of everything. But provided that I would not have suffered any wounds, I think. Like with the 3 wounds on the dragon, it's really a risky move to do so. So otherwise, the Spectral Hunters on the right, I wanted to advance them to the war machines. But then my opponent, he told me that the Kadeems are actually looking to the right. So these models, they're not really modeled in such a way that you can very clearly see the front of the unit. So I was kind of I was thankful that he reminded me. Yeah, so they end up in the position where they are, and hopefully next turn they can start their Reaper attacks. So I think normally in the second turn you're already able to use these Reaper attacks, and obviously it really helps if you have some movement spells in your army. The only thing is that your wizard has to be within range of the unit in order to cast the spell, of course. Yeah, so otherwise I am also a little bit preparing for the ambush of the Dragon Ogres with my unit of skeletons on the top right. And I would say that so far everything is going quite well. The only thing is that the Winged Reapers on the left, they didn't really manage to do what I had expected them to do, so they only did like 1 or 2 wounds on the Kadeems, and the Kadeems did like 5 wounds back. So that was definitely not great. Then it's my opponent's turn. My opponent, he tries to ram into the skeletons with his Infernal Engine, but he unfortunately fails the charge. So he ends up 1 inch in front of my unit. And that is quite okay with me, because I don't really want to have a unit of skeletons without any character in there facing off against an Infernal Engine, because I'm going to be stuck there forever. Even though I could probably, I don't know if I could countercharge him with the Winged Reapers. I should have paid more attention to that, and also with the Spectral Hunters I could still countercharge him. But it's definitely a bit of an issue for my army to tackle at this point. So I am considering switching over to Master Avocation, Master Occultism to get Marked for Doom and the snipe spell from Avocation, and also the movement spells, so that you get a bit more threat from the Spectral Hunters, maybe put some raids in. Because anyway, I'm not allowed to use the 2x3 Winged Reapers with this list. So that might be a future iteration of the list. But then otherwise, what is happening? So my opponent is again casting spells like a madman. He got enveloping embers off of my big skeleton unit in front. He rolled a miscast on it, so he got the result that he forgot the spell for the rest of the game, so I thought that was quite a good trade for me. Just to have enveloping embers once, it's more than enough for this type of army. So he tries to get some more shots onto my zombie dragon. I'm still a little bit over 24 inches away from the Titan mortars. Whilst the ballistas, I believe they are just in range. Or at least just in short range. But I don't care that much about the ballista on the left. Because even if it hits, it wounds me on a 4+. I still have my 6+ regen save, and then it does D3 wounds because it's a Hobgoblin ballista instead of a Scorpion. So it doesn't have clipped wings or anything. And then, yeah, so the magic phase had run its course, and then my opponent proceeded to go to the shooting. And then with the blunderbuss unit and with the Infernal Dwarfs, he shot at my Spectral Hunters, and he inflicted with 10 shots something like, I don't know, 14 hits or so, because for every hit that you roll, you get an extra hit if you have a lot of ranks. He has a lot of ranks, so he does. But he's hitting me on a 5+. He had 7 5s or so he had 14 hits. Then he proceeded to wound all of them, and I proceeded to fail like 8 saves or so on a 3+. So that was that was a ridiculous situation, to say the least. So yeah, just losing this unit was incredibly painful. I had expected to lose a couple of guys, maybe 2 or 3 maybe, especially also with the hard target from the vampire. Because they were still within 12 inches. And then I would have been able to go over the Kadeems, and then next turn into one of the war machines over there. So that was my plan. But well, as you can see, unfortunately, that didn't really happen. Yes, so then we go back to my turn. Yeah, so I have several options here, because at this point I'm quite close to my enemy. The only bummer is that my vampire dragon is not going to be able to, or my zombie dragon is not going to be able to go into the infernal engine at this point, because now he has, I believe I healed 2 wounds in the last round, so he only has 1 wound on him. And then in that type of matchup, I think I should dare to go into the infernal engine, because I'm also still vampiric on a 3+ with a reroll. If I'm in combat, I'm not going to be able to be targeted by his shooting. So it would have been a nice situation to be able to go into this infernal engine. The other option I have is to charge it into the flank with my Phantom Hosts, because they have the Aegis of 2+ against non-magical attacks. So then I can just lock his infernal engine into place, and yeah, I'll just see what happens in the grind. Maybe I'll just even put some wounds on with AP1 with 8 attacks, but he's also not going to do a lot to me, so that would be a good situation. And otherwise the direwolves, they're going to charge the war machine, so the Titan Mortar, firstly to lock it into combat, secondly to maybe kill it. And yeah, the rest of the list is mostly just advancing. Oh yeah, the Winged Reapers, they charge into the Hobgoblins with spears. So the Hobgoblins, they have spears, they're gonna strike at the same time as my Winged Reapers, but they only have strength 3, so I'm not really worried about them. Yeah, and that's it basically. So far the list is holding up quite well against the copious amount of shooting that my opponent is bringing. I thought it was going to be quite risky to have a zombie dragon, and indeed it is, but with the Stormcaller it really helps to diminish the shooting output of your enemy. So right now I also have a funny situation where I can go into the forest of basically the deployment zone of my opponent. So I'm going to get the soft cover for the bolt thrower in my left flank. I'm going to get soft cover for the other ones on the right. The Titan Mortar is still at long range, I believe. So it's at long range, it's soft cover, it's hard target because of the Stormcaller. So even with the Engineer, it's going to naturally hit on 6s. If it's going to roll a 6 for the amount of hits or the amount of shots it's going to do, it's going to hit me on 7. So that is good. I'm in a good position now because I can just look over my own troops. I can charge into anything I want. Yeah, so from my perspective, this is looking quite good. Then the skeletons. So the skeleton block that was in front of the Infernal Engine swift reformed and walked a bit towards my opponent. And then yeah, the other skeletons are just advancing up. So I'm careful not to expose my Necromancer to my opponent. The BSB is in the back unit. Maybe I should have put him in the front unit by now, because the damage output of my opponent is not that big. But on the other hand, if my opponent charges in with the Infernal Warriors into my first block of skeletons, it's going to be a painful day. Yeah, and so then you go to the magic phase with vampire counts. It's always very funny, because the Arise spell is so incredibly threatening. So I have this Necromancer who's just in the back of the skeletons. So he can cast with a 6-inch Babble the Arise spell. If he manages to pull it off, he can also heal a wound within 12 inches. So he's gonna heal a wound on the zombie dragon. I do get it off, I heal a wound on the zombie dragon. I heal a shitload of skeletons. And it all seems to be going great for me, basically. The only sad thing is that the Winged Reapers, due to their delay in killing the Kadeems on the left, I feel like they missed a turn where they should already have been able to move back to my line, or at least to make them more effective in the rest of the game. By this time my opponent was complaining a little bit about the reduced effect of his shooting due to a 90-point item. Which is fair, but it's also kind of a way to make a zombie dragon work, because if you don't get this item, then well, if you face a cannon first turn, you're gonna take a lot of damage. Next turn you have to just try to recover, and then turn after you have to hopefully not get shot by a cannon again. But it's really tricky if you don't have Stormcaller, and I think it really makes a big difference in terms of matchup. But the list setup I currently have, I feel like I still lack a little bit of ranged damage output. Because if you're able to just also actively remove cannons from your opponent, then it's gonna aid into the survivability of the dragon, obviously. Yeah, so my opponent does get his Historic Anointed, and they do go into the ruins. And his Kadeems, they go outside of my line of sight on the flank, after having made their maximized frenzy check that they had to make. Yeah, my opponent is just assessing his side of the situation. Yeah, so one thing that he is going to do in the magic phase that I didn't really foresee was that he cast Flaming Swords on the Infernal Engine to give magical attacks. I should have accounted for that. I didn't. So he gets it through, and he gets magical attacks on his grind attacks also, because it's melee attacks rather than just the close combat attacks. So the Phantom Host is gonna suffer a considerable amount more than it actually had to. The only thing is that, well, right now I'm just sacrificing my Phantom Host to survive the magic phase of my opponent, basically, which is fair. So yeah, I don't care too much about the Phantom Host, and even yeah, even if he does manage to kill the Phantom Host, it's not too big of a deal. So his Infernal God, or his warriors, they turn to face my combat block and my dragon. And I don't know how confident he was about this matchup, but I'm quite confident about it. So I was looking at this, and I was wondering if the skeletons could actually come into contact of the Infernal Warriors. And then later we measured it out, and the distance between the rightmost point of the Infernal Warrior straight to the Demon Engine is 14 centimeters, a little bit more, and my unit is 7 deep, so it's also 14 centimeters. So the unit is going to be able to fit in, the Zombie Dragon is going to be able to fit in, so I'm going to try to take care of that situation. And otherwise, yeah, it's mostly just a lot of dice rolling, and my opponent killing some skeletons mostly, putting the occasional wound on the Zombie Dragon, but I believe the Zombie Dragon doesn't go beyond 2 or 3 wounds at this point. And yeah, this experience kind of made me realize that 6 wounds on a Zombie Dragon is really what you want to have. Like if you compare it to Monstrous Revenant, then the Revenant probably doesn't have enough wounds to do this kind of wound hustling. Because the Zombie Dragon at some point also was at 4 wounds. So yeah, it's against the gunline, it's definitely a bit of a risky play, but it's a fun play for sure. So then we go to my turn again. The skeletons go in, the Zombie Dragon goes in, and I accidentally also charge in the skeletons on the right. I shouldn't have done that. So the reason why you'll see later. But yeah, I can already discuss it now. So the skeletons on the right, they charge in, but I already have the ranks. I already have the Zombie Dragon in there. I'm gonna win combat by a ton, because I can challenge out, or I can deny the challenge through accepting a challenge with my skeleton champion. So my Zombie Dragon can just go to town on these warriors, inflicting hopefully a lot of wounds. I'm going to be hit back on a 5+ only, so my opponent is not going to hit me a lot. And then it's not going to wound a lot also, of course. So I do have the ranks, I do have the kills, I do break his steadfast. He isn't stubborn, so I have no reason to go even in the flank of this unit after that also. And then, yeah, now my right flank is kind of open to the Toruk. So yeah, I did go into the Demon Engine with my unit with the Vampire to try and mop up the Demon Engine over time. And also I consolidated the Winged Reapers so that they could help in that regard over the later turns. Yeah, and otherwise we're just happily grinding away the Hobgoblins. We're dishing it out with the War Machine on the left. Yeah, and then we go to combat, and the Zombie Dragon really goes to town, and it kills a lot of the warriors. So my opponent gets an auto break, and yeah, this is the moment where we're looking at the table and we're like, yeah, okay, they're gonna flee. I'm gonna elect for them to flee away from the dragon. So maybe that was also a mistake. Because in this way everything is basically stuck. So if the rightmost unit had not charged in, I would have had a Pursuit with the skeletons possibly into his mage bunker. The dragon could have restrained and just reorient as it is now, and the skeletons on the right would have been next to the ruins, just be able to block the charges of the Torug Anointed. So the reason that we thought that a overrun of, or a Pursuit and then an overrun into the wizard bunker of my opponent was not possible is because the skeletons on the right in front of his unit are just in a position where they can't even pivot on the spot to turn and face the direction that they should be going. And in that sense, in that case, you backtrack the unit to its last legal position. So we thought we just had to leave it where it was, because there's no way that it can do anything else. So that was a bit of a bummer. But I would like to hear your thoughts about what you would think that would have been the right way to play this out. Yeah, so the zombie dragon's still living, so that's a good thing. And otherwise, yeah, now this is the time where my opponent is going to get the charges. So he's going to charge in with his Karim's Incarnates into the flank of my middle skeleton unit, with the Torug Anointed into my top unit of skeletons with the BSB. And by this time the Infernal Engine already killed off my Necromancer. So just in one round of combat, 3+2 hit, 3 hits, 3+2 wound, 3 wounds, Necro dead, okay. Even though I had a 5+ Aegis on the unit. So that was a shame. I might have to be a bit more careful with my Necromancer. But yeah, so maybe I should replace this BSB with a White King. So that also in these type of situations where you do want to go into combat, and you have some models that can strike at your Necromancer, they actually have to strike at your White King. So this is actually a funny situation that I never thought about before, but if you have like a single model that is up against both your BSB and your Necromancer, then he actually has to strike on the BSB instead of your Necromancer due to the Unliving Shield rule, I believe. So I always considered it for infantry models where you have like this one infantry model that then instead has to strike at your BSB instead of the Necromancer. But for single models, it's actually quite a big impact that this rule has. Yeah, so yeah, my opponent comes into the flank of my skeletons with his Dragon Ogres. That's not going to bode really well for them, even though I do have the 5+ Aegis. So I was expecting over time to grind down the Infernal Engine of my opponent, because I have 4 attacks that I believe hit on 2+, and then they wound on 5+, which is kind of bad, but then my opponent doesn't have a lot of armor left, because I believe it only has a 3+ armor save to start with. So I was expecting to do a couple of wounds here and there. I still have my static combat res with Legion Standard, actually in that unit 2 Legion Standard, so I have a static combat res of 1 for the BSB, 2 for the Legion standards, 3 for the ranks themselves, +1 for the Karstein Vampire, +1 for the standard bearer itself. So then you get to 8. Wait, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8. So with a static combat res of 8 and the potential of doing just a couple of wounds, I thought it would bode still pretty well for me, especially with the 5+ Aegis on the unit. Unfortunately, my opponent does win the combat, but I crumble only like 1 or 2 skeletons. Yeah, and then the Kadeems, they actually the rolls of my opponents with these Kadeems is really incredibly amazing. Like you can see that there's 3 Kadeems in the sides of my skeletons. In the end, they're gonna be able to remove about 21 skeletons with the 3 models that they are. So they have 3 attacks each. There's a champion for a 4th attack, so they have 10 attacks. They hit me on 3+, they wound me on 2+. So that should have been something like 6 wounds. They do have battle focus, I believe. So something like 6 or 7 wounds. He's in the flank. He has a charge. And then he does after Volcanic Embrace. I believe 21 wounds is a bit excessive. That's the short story on my side. Yeah, then we go to my turn. I charge with the Wing Creepers into the Kadeems. I charge with the Wing Creepers into the Toruk Anointed, and I think this is actually a mistake. Maybe I should have actually charged into the Demon Engine, the Infernal Engine. Also, so that if the Infernal Engine was going to go down, my Wing Creepers would not be affected by the combat result of the combat, whilst the wounds would... Is that true? Maybe they would still be. I don't know. I don't actually know. Yeah, but anyway, removing the Infernal Engine would have allowed me to reorient my unit towards the Dragonogus, the Toruk, and then he wouldn't get the flank bonus, basically. Also, the Zombie Dragon, you don't really see it move a lot during this turn. That's because he charged the Bolt Thrower, and because there was no space to charge the unit of hobgoblins with the wizard in there. So I failed to charge against the Bolt Thrower, and I was very sad about that, because at this point I'm at 4 wounds on my Zombie Dragon, I believe. So I do need a kind of a desperate healing on him. So this makes the game really tense. So that's a nice aspect, I think. Probably it can also go horribly wrong at times, but probably if your opponent has limited shooting, it's going to be fine. And in this case, the magic that my opponent had was not really ideally suited to take down my dragon. So if I run into opponents with better spells against the Zombie Dragon, it's probably wise to take an Obsidian Rock. So I think for future games I'm going to bring the Obsidian Rock onto my my Vampire Lord, just for the matchups where your opponent has a lot of offensive magic. And magic resistance too is not gonna be a game changer probably, but in some situations it might be. So for 25 points, it's basically a steal. Yeah. So then we go to the combat with the Dragonogus. Again, I get my ward save up, but my opponent really goes to town on this unit. My Winged Reapers, they hit like once or twice, and they don't do any wounds to the Dragonogus. My BSB does manage to slip through 2 wounds onto the Infernal Engine, so that compensates a little bit. And I realize now that I actually forgot to make the Vampiric roll with my BSB at this point. So the Dragonogus, they do reduce my unit to like 10 models in total, which is kind of painful, especially for the fact that the middle row of Dragon Ogres is still in contact now with my skeletons, and they're gonna strike before the Infernal Engine does. So that is gonna hurt. So I would have liked more if these 5 models would have been gone, and there would have been only just one Dragon Ogre in contact with the skeletons. Otherwise, the Winged Reapers in the Kadim combat, they also fluff completely, so they don't remove the Kadims. So probably this specific unit of Winged Reapers is not really well equipped to handle Kadims, because the previous unit of Kadims they also kind of suffered on. Oh no, that was actually the other unit. So Winged Reapers in general are really good units, I would say. Just because they're really mobile, they can you can get everywhere with them as long as you're able to march with them, which is one of their advantages over, for example, Barrowguard. But it's really sad when they don't perform as they should. Like, you're hitting on 3+, you're winning on 4+. It shouldn't be that difficult, right? Anyway, so my opponent it's a funny concept behind Infernal Dwarfs, where you do have a gunline that shoots quite well, and then once you get there you actually get slaughtered in combat. So yeah, the Dragon Ogres, they go to town again. They remove a lot of skeletons, and at the end of combat actually all of the skeletons are gone. My BSB has taken a wound, but he is still alive, and he's providing contact between the Dragon Ogres and the Infernal Engine. Due to combat res, also my Winged Reaper crumbles down. And in the meantime, I actually don't have a lot of damage on the Dragon Ogres and the Infernal Engine. I believe the Infernal Engine at this point only has 3 wounds. Unfortunately, this is where the recording stops. So we played for 3 hours, and then we forgot to put on a new video. But what happens in the end is that the Vampire Lord on the Dragon does manage to get into the Ballista. He does survive till the end of the game, even though he survives with only 1 wound left. Basically also because of a little bit of bad luck, not being able to make a vampiric roll, not getting any magic through, etc. My BSB, I charge in with the Winged Reapers on the side of his Dragon Ogres, and then my BSB actually wins combat, but my opponent makes a stubborn test. I do have my Destiny's Call. I'm actually quite comfortable in this situation with the BSB, just between the Dragon Ogres and the Infernal Engine, which sounds preposterous. But I think that's a grind that I'd rather have than the grind with the skeletons involved. And also my Dragon Ogres of my opponent are locked in combat in that situation, because they're flanking my BSB, but they are being flanked by my Winged Reapers, so they're engaged at 2 fronts, so my 2 Winged Reapers can easily just grind down the Dragon Ogres in that sense. Yeah, so we counted out the points. I was, due to my mistake in the 3rd round of the game, where I charged in the skeleton units on the dwarves. Due to that mistake, I didn't manage to get the Wizard Master of my opponent, including the Hobgoblins. So it turned out to be a draw in terms of points, but it was breakthrough. I have my skeletons in my opponent's deployment, so it turned out to be a 13-7 to the Vampire Covenant. So I was quite happy with the performance, quite happy with the way that just giving hard target in 12-inch bubble shuts down your opponent's shooting output. It's just going to be a little bit exciting to play against cannons specifically. So maybe I also need a model that has the same size as the Zombie Dragon, just to be able to hide behind, but I don't really know if Vampire Covenant has such a model. You have the Terror guys, but I only have one of these Towering Presence models, so I don't believe a Cordis is high enough, or any of the other altars. So, well, let's see. I'm gonna give this army a couple more goes, and let's see how it progresses.